Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. If I sound a little bit louder, I turned up my volume because I've said for probably a year straight now, if not longer, that if I ever got any feedback that my volume sounded too quiet, I'd turn myself up, or if I sounded too loud, I'd turn myself down. I finally got some feedback, although it was on pre-recorded footage, so I can't really adjust the volume until I start pre-recording footage for past October. But yeah, I don't know how much of the volume really could be affected too much, because I feel like maybe not on live streams, but definitely on pre-uploaded videos, I suspect the audio is somewhat normalized. Anyways, so yeah, I've turned up both the game volume and the uh, microphone volume. So unless somebody lets me know that this is way too loud, I went from like negative 2.5 decibels to just 0 decibels, which with the logarithmic decibel scale as it is, that technically doubles it, but doesn't really sound like it doubles it as far as the volume goes. I also played, as you probably could tell, a ton of Shadowverse here off screen. So I have like one private game, and then just basically goofing off for today, which means today can be a fairly slow day, a fairly short video for Wednesday. We have some things to click here. So yeah, so far I've only missed day one. I'll play a private game today and then a private game tomorrow, and then be done with it. The Steam summer sale ends tomorrow. I just straight up sold all the trading cards. I didn't even care. I will think I'll try to remember to go through the curation field on Steam's store page and look at that curator's feed or whatever it's called, and get one more trading card. But I'm just gonna straight up sell it and get a few pennies. Really, is all that it matters. Well, as far as the accountability section, I did go back and play Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice some more. I'm probably have about 2 more hours of gameplay there. The special real world money offer is now gone. And there's a middle section where you do like 5 different things where you have no weapon, so there's no fighting at all. 5 different things are very generic and very much feel like filler stuff. They're not very puzzly, they're not very fun. And then at the end of that you get a sword, and then you're at the end just doing the same bad fighting. Like, it certainly highlights why there was a fairly quick drop-off as far as enthusiasm for Hellblade. I don't feel like it made it to any Game of the Year discussions at the end of the year that it came out for that specific reason. But yeah, it's there's just no game there. Like, I'm not exaggerating to say when I say it is maybe 5 enemies that attack you. The 5 enemies are not visually varied. They don't attack in a varied way. They're not fun by any means. It's much closer to just a quick time event to counter and then stun the enemies so that you can then just beat on them a bunch. The puzzles are dull, and there's just not anywhere near enough of them. If that was what the game was going to be, it is a far cry from something like The Witness, where there's hundreds upon hundreds of puzzles, and there's probably, I'd say, less than a dozen puzzles in the entire game, and they're not varied by any means. Oddly, the only thing I would say is that the back half of Hellblade is a lot more more aligned towards a Dante's Inferno style game. There's these sea of corpses scene where you straight up are seeing these burnt bodies of varying sizes just writhing in agony, and you're wading through a blood pit, and it's just like, alright, that's certainly much closer to something like the game Agony than the visuals that we started with, which felt like more of a realistic, here's people on spikes, here's people hung, here's burnt bodies, but they're all kind of the exact same thing. So there's a real lack of interest because of that. Like, once you've seen it, and it isn't so visually scarring that it really affected me. Nor did it really even feel like it affected Suna, because, like, being from the time that you assume she's from, seeing dead bodies seems that would more than likely be a fairly commonplace event. So, yeah. And it seems like the only thing that could possibly happen is that you're going to take this new sword you got and fight this giant creature that you saw, possibly in a cutscene and not even in a gameplay mechanic. And that's pretty much it. The reveals of half of the story are just telling you, like, straight up Viking myth stories. I don't think they're changing any of the myth or story at all. It seems like the story they were talking about for Loki, for instance, I did recognize. So it seems like the entirety of the writing of Suna comes down to the backstory of her as a character, as being this person that is crazy, who was abused by her father. That gets revealed, and fell in love with this guy Dylan, and that's pretty much it. It's like, I could have easily guessed her story from the very beginning of the game if you just told me that the story was going to involve a lover named Dylan and her father and her mother. Like, and frankly, almost anybody could have written as good, if not better, story. It really makes me wonder, what in the world can Hellblade 2 really be? Because it can't just be visuals. I would argue the visuals are horribly directed, because there's almost never anything on screen behind Suna when you're looking at her face and seeing one of these acting CGI scenes that really would have made a little bit more sense, but still really wouldn't make a lot of sense if it had been a CGI movie. I wonder heavily if that was their original goal, was to make a CGI movie, and that all the gameplay elements were added later. But there is an awkward, like poorly directed wobble of the camera that, if it's meant to make the viewer feel off-put or at ill ease, it doesn't really succeed well at doing that for me. But also I think it might very well just be hiding the fact that in the facial capture of the actor for Suna, they had a camera on her head, and there needed to be some kind of image stabilization put on top of that footage because of that, and so they've added a wobble to hide the fact that they put a massive amount of image stabilization on it, or they just didn't know how to properly stabilize an image. It's also awkwardly directed in that Suna is very often looking directly towards the camera, which is off-putting, but doesn't feel intentionally off-putting. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. There's weirdness certainly in her as a character, in that she seems to have every single fear that a human can have, every single mental disability that any human could have. She is just this pantheon of whatever they were told about when they consulted with a psychologist. And I bet they had a 4-hour meeting with a psychologist, and they took every single disease or disorder mentioned and decided to make a character around that. Which, yeah, I don't get how a game like Hellblade even gets green lit unless it was way more ambitious than its final product, which I suspect is the case. A lot of what it looks like is to the Tomb Raider reboot. So if you think back to what was the entire Tomb Raider reboot trilogy has happened now, so you're talking probably 6+ years before this point. If they had seen the Tomb Raider reboot and said, we want to do something like that, and maybe they'd even heard some rumors about what the God of War reboot was going to be, then it kind of makes sense. If you went down the wrong path and thought, oh, all games are going to look like the Tomb Raider reboot. But even the Tomb Raider reboot, in comparison, has way more gameplay mechanics. Like, there's hunting, there's weapon upgrades, there's puzzles, there's platforming. Just none of that is in Hellblade. Also, I would say that if you were going to fix Hellblade, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to turn it into a shorter experience along the lines of a Dark Souls game, Demon Souls game, because there hasn't been a Souls game that's been big that is around the Celtic Viking mythos or imagery. So you could have beaten the original creators of the Souls games to the punch there. It would have allowed you to have a lot of enemies just stand in a specific area and have Suna potentially sneak behind them and stab them, or engage them in direct combat and have to really struggle to defeat every single enemy, instead of what the game really does, which is just spawn out of nothing enemies, and they only spawn in big round empty arena areas, and they spawn in groups, and then they do the exact same attacks. As pretty as Hellblade looks, it actually is kind of a lazily designed game visually, because there aren't that many enemies in actuality, and there aren't that many sceneries. A lot of like asset flip things. You'll see a lot of Viking shields and Viking era benches and buildings, stone buildings, wooden buildings, a lot of trees, a lot of Viking ships. And then you have just like mountains and water, and it's fairly easy to create. Yeah. I would definitely say play the new God of War before playing Hellblade. I would say play Heavenly Sword, or even Odyssey Escape to the West, I think is the name of that game. 2 other games, or the DMC Devil May Cry reboot game that went nowhere. All of those games are way better than Hellblade were. So, unless they worked on Hellblade at the same time that they were working on DMC, or DMC took a ridiculously long amount of time and went over schedule, and that's why Hellblade is so small. That could be about the only excuse I could think of for the game to come out that way. And then there's just no excuse at all for it being a critical darling. It really just highlights what idiots mainstream video game journalists have become, that they would just be enthralled or pretend like they're enthralled with the visuals of Hellblade and completely ignore the fact that there's no writing in there, that there's no gameplay in there. It's kind of insane. And it definitely feeds into the idea that video game journalists just don't play games. They just don't play the games that they're supposed to. So I used all my vials here, and that got me up to 3. And 3 of the silvers. And I think I was going the other direction last time, so if I found that the last card that I don't have at least 1 copy of is a 5 or a 6 mana card, then that would say that there's a considerably small amount of cards left that I need to craft, which is nice. Of course, it gets only more difficult from that point. Yeah, the last card that I would need to craft is this 5 one, from what I can see. So that's, let's see, 5 plus another, let's say 5, 10, 11, 16, 19, 22, 30, bunch here, let's see, 39, let's say, and then 46, then another 5 would be 52, and then another 7 would be 59, and then another 9 would be 67, plus another 7 would be 74, plus another 4 would be 81. So roughly 80, if I was going to count, times 200 means I need like, well, not 1060, but 10,000 or 16,000 vials. 16,000 vials, I believe. And then we would have all of the silver, which then it would just become a matter of crafting for 4 times as much with gold to get gold cards. And I don't see a way that there wouldn't be. major gaps here of missing cards as far as gold cards. Like, that seems like that would completely be the case. Yeah. Anyways, I'm tired about talking about Hellblade, so I'll leave it at that. Here we have one of my new consistent fans, I believe, on the chat question: how do you choose the image for the video? This is from Lou Casabon Bernardo, I believe is how you'd pronounce his name. He speaks Spanish natively, so his English is fine, but he's just kind of learning to write in English. If you mean how do I choose the preview image on YouTube, I don't. You can do that. That is something that I desperately need to hire an artist the second I could actually afford one and actually make any profit on YouTube again. I desperately would need to have somebody make thumbnails, or what they're called, and upload those. But I don't. YouTube has a algorithm that is mostly looking for human faces, and on pre-recorded footage it just says whatever is the biggest human face, it'll try and put that as the default thumbnail. It looks throughout the entirety of your video. Live streaming, it's not so good at that, so it's just kind of random. There's certainly a lot more that's going on when I'm live streaming, as far as, like, I use open broadcast software to show the game I'm playing and capture that. That's fairly standard, but then I've done considerable amounts of adjustment and tweaking to then let me do what I call the web peek over here, which brings it to a second monitor that is to the right of my screen. So I have it triggered when I move my mouse all the way to the right of the screen. It has to be within about 20 pixels, where we're halfway through where a regular scroll bar is, and then that will move the screen over to the side and show this. The web peek using OBS then shows the game that's being captured, and captures two instances of the same program at the top called desktop ticker that scrolls RSS feeds, or what they're called, which I think stands for really simple syndication of video game sites, and so that scrolls like news. And then I have a massive amount of adjustments to Chrome itself while I'm showing a web page here from Video Game Chronicles. I use a program called uBlock Origin to block a massive amount of ads and content. This is something that also brings what I'm showing more to a fair use point, but visually it just makes it look a lot better. There's no point in talking about a video game article when you've got like visual glitches because it's at the wrong size, and you've got ads being blocked, and there's just ridiculous advertisement on advertisement on advertisement to push you towards reading more of their articles. So I use uBlock Origin to fix that, and the way that works is you can say, if you didn't want to show this image here on uBlock Origin, you can just click block element, or you can use a picker to pick a specific part of the web page, and you have to figure out the CSS HTML. It's really CSS code that it uses of the page to see what you're going to get rid of or not get rid of. I also use a secondary ad blocker called, what is it, Privacy Badger. I also use a plugin called Clutter Free that stops me from opening double tabs, although that doesn't work that well. I also use a program called Center Pages, which allows me to center a page or left or right justify a page and increase the margin, which sometimes adjusts things a little bit better if you want to do it that way. Let's see. For YouTube, there's a plugin everybody should use called TubeBuddy. There is a plugin called Unhook YouTube I use that gets rid of a lot of ads when looking at a YouTube video. And there is a plugin called Auto Mute. Now, Auto Mute is interesting because I've created a system in which I can play a video and hear it in my headphones and it not play into the recording of OBS. And what that is, how that is done is using a software called Visual Banana, which creates these virtual sound cards on your it creates virtual sound cards on your PC, and I have Chrome specifically playing to a different sound card than everything else. And so then through OBS I have a special audio source just for Chrome that that would let me hear any audio if I need to hear any audio. Now, 9 times out of 10 you don't need to hear any audio anyway, so it's kind of a pointless addition, but it does let you potentially watch a YouTube video and not immediately play it into the stream and then let somebody content ID claim that your video. There is also a plugin I use called Minimal Scroll Bar, which just lowers the size of the scroll bar, but you can't even see it anyways because that much of the screen is actually clipped off on the screen. I don't even know why that is the case. But yeah, I've just straight up clipped off the scroll bar so that you don't see it. But it does make a scroll bar show up smaller. Minimal scroll bar actually works only half the time anyways. I don't know if there's anything else that's really that important. HTTPS everywhere is a good one for everybody to have. Backup and restore tabs is a good one for everyone to have. Let's see, link clump lets me open a ton of links at the same time, which can be dangerous and can crash your computer if you don't have enough RAM. Steam database gives me some extra bits of information when I look through a Steam page. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Some of these other ones are some of the other plugins I have, like Mailvelope is to encrypt emails, so end-to-end encryption. It doesn't have anything to do with what I'm doing now. Do we have anything specific that I need to play as, or do I just need to play? I think I just need to play. It's these 5 victories that are kind of the problem. And what I would like to really see is Shadowverse fix its scheduling a lot better. There should be a week in which you are given rewards for playing that is probably the last week of the month. There should be a new expansion happening during the first week of the month. There should be an event somewhere around the third week of the month. And maybe a different event on the second week of the month. But it should really give you reasons to play every week of the month equally and more motivate the players. It also should I've forgotten what I was going to say. It should probably also focus more on either not rewarding people for playing on the weekends or superficially rewarding people for playing on the weekends. I wouldn't be upset with you can catch up on missed daily quests on the weekends. Their daily quest system is certainly part of their problem in that they give you 3 different daily quests every single day, so they want you to play every single day. And that's just way too much collectible card games for most people. You're rewarding your top 1% of players, while effectively punishing everyone who's not a top 1% player. The other thing I was going to talk about at the accountability section, though, was I've for months been having troubles with my Wi-Fi, where it would specifically, it seemed like on the 5 gigahertz, just lose connection to the internet, and I could not figure out what it was, and I just struggled and struggled and struggled, and I am still not 100% sure I know what the reasoning or what happened there. And I thought I'd fixed it. I thought I'd just figured it out by basically turning off the quality of service settings that were overly complicated and having a much simpler quality of service settings. Well, I went back and looked at my Wi-Fi router for some reason, and apparently for weeks, if not a month, if not longer, the 5 gigahertz on my Wi-Fi has just not been working at all, and I didn't notice. So I very well may have fixed it by breaking it so much that it would just use the 2.5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band only, which was pretty much never having a problem in the first place. So once again, it felt like yesterday was going to just be one of those days where I was going to end up spending a humongous amount of time trying to get the Wi-Fi working. Surprisingly, shockingly, it didn't turn out to be the case. I was able to restore from a backup, see the settings from that restored backup, and adjust the settings accordingly, so that would no longer be an issue. But that is annoying, to say the least, to find out that you haven't even been using it, the setting. That being said, since I was already working on the Wi-Fi router, and I did change some settings that maybe will fix some things, and I've yet to see massive problems on the network. But yeah, while I was working on this, since I got an external USB hard drive on sale during Prime Day, I decided that it probably is best used as a slightly off-site, not really off-site, backup, secondary backup source, since my DDWRT hacked router has a USB 3 plug on it. I was able to plug the hard drive into it and turn it into a network attached service with a what they call Samba. That's the protocol share. So yeah, I am now in the middle of the process of setting up a app that I use called Folder Sync to back up my phone and tablet so that it will back up to the router's hard drive now, and trying to set up Windows 10 or the Windows 7 backup that is in Windows 10 to consistently work as far as backing up to that Samba share too, which I am hoping that will work, but it seems like it is running into some problems. I'm not sure that the whole thing isn't going to run into some problems. There are different versions of Samba, and that is the question will be certainly how much, which versions work and which versions don't. It's not like there's a lot of settings that to configure using the router. I could go into the internal files and change a lot of settings with Samba. But I'm going to try and keep everything simple, to keep it simple, stupid process. It also has a DNLA server, so assuming that there's enough room, I may just back up my music and videos, and if I have any photos, to stream from the router as a backup source. At some point I'll get my server running again. I actually did move it to a new case and plug it in and turn it on, but then apparently I changed the password at some point, and I'm gonna have to remember what password and what login was being used. Lou Casabon Bernardo says, well, I'm going to leave the live stream because it's pretty late here. Bye bye. Bye, Lou. Nice to see you chatting and have a chat with you. Yep. It's fairly late here, even where I'm streaming. I've still starting later than I should because of insomnia. I was awake earlier, I just was not kind of in the mental shape to start streaming at like 10 in the morning, do a 3-hour stream, and then still be awake and mentally alert at 1 in the afternoon. Damn. And I just don't think I ever really want to stream it. Say,
these canals.
Sheep counting jutsu.
To battle, comrades.
Yeah, I just don't think I want to stream at like 6 in the morning. That's just too early. Alright, so let's cover the video game news since we don't really have any quests to do. Like, sure, I can get temporary gems by winning 3 games, and I need to do a private game. I may burn through the news so quickly today, too, that we could potentially just have like a 2-hour stream.
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Guess you evolved this one.
Find your clues, find your baddie. Oh, so it's a fight you want. There's sand in my eyes. No escape.
Get that. Get that.
To battle, comrades.
Get that. So we have a Video Games Chronicle article here. Ubisoft is working on Assassin's Creed Infinity, a huge evolving online game. The live service title will have multiple historical settings, a report claims. Now, how...
Someone call for a genius.
My real question here is, how is this not just going to be the multiplayer concept that existed before with Assassin's Creed, where you're just playing multiple video game modes?
You crusty horseshoe.
Like, that would be about the only thing I could think as far as what the experience would be. Otherwise, it pretty much just seems like you would make an Assassin's Creed game and then try and make it open world and making it this RPG game and things, which that's what they've kind of done with the Assassin's Creed series, is significantly change what it is away from what it was.
No escape.
So yeah, I really would have to question, like, what the point is going to be around something like that.
I am a prisoner of this world's whims.
Sorry, I'm distracted. Yeah. Either this is going to be a player versus player game to replace all the other multiplayer Assassin's Creed games that have now been shut down, and I think it's important to remember that that there is a considerable amount of I've just lost the plot on this. I guess at the end of the day, I just don't care enough about Assassin's Creed to even go any further in this conversation.
So it's a fight you want.
A fitting end. I need more fear, more terror.
Yeah, we will see, is I guess what I should just say. We will see what that mode is, and if anybody is actually going to care about that mode in any way.
Die, cretin.
Another pointless path.
One step closer to victory. Harder armor. Steel yourself.
Best of luck to you.
And loyalty is ironclad.
One of the things about this article I did notice is that they are talking about this Assassin's Creed game while also referencing a lot of the accusations and conflict Ubisoft has had. I don't feel like that's fair. I feel like that gets to a dangerous cancel culture concept to bring up dirt and accusations, so some of which have definitely not been proven in a court of law, in every single article, and try and hurt a company every single time. At a certain point, you're not reporting news there, you're being vindictive. It would be one thing if it was just standard fare on your website to say, here is the history of Ubisoft, as like anytime we're discussing anytime you're discussing a company, they as policy have a link towards that company's history page. That would be one thing. Right. That's not going to work.
Steel yourself. My armor has been pierced. Steel yourself.
The uncharted desert awaits.
I
That
am a
might
prisoner
very
of
well
this
be the
world's
reason why I
whims.
didn't choose Video Game Chronicle in the first place, is that it does perhaps report on unrelated things. And nobody wants in a news story ever to
The uncharted desert awaits.
have entire paragraphs dedicated to off-topic discussions. Like that's just bad writing. That's the kind of things that you would get marked down in an English class for. Is it?
Best of luck to you.
And it's definitely the type of thing you should be marked down for in a journalism class.
Judgment has come.
Let's see.
I need more fear, more terror.
Got a job.
Okay. Keep this one, because we can't get rid of that one anyways. Keep that one. Keep that one.
Another pointless path.
And this is gonna deal 8 damage to everything anyways, so
Die, cretin.
let's hit that.
Best of luck to you.
Might as well play this. Might as well heal this. And the chutney.
And loyalty is ironclad.
Oh, this must not be evolved. Sweet.
Was ever a drink more bitter?
I'd also argue if this is real news, a new cheat software claims to work on any console via machine learning. Then AI auto aim software could be more difficult to crack down on consoles. Is this really news to say that a cheat software would make kind of a claim that is probably half puffery and half true, or very possibly completely false? Like, right, that worked. The Video Games Chronicle also has an article. The Super Mario movie will be a Peacock exclusive in the US after it leaves cinemas. All Universal, Illumination, and DreamWorks films will come to Peacock first after theaters, which I guess that's the Mario movie included too.
And
We haven't heard anything about the Mario movie since its initial announcement, basically. So, and every indication is that the Mario movie is going to be very kid-friendly experience and not anything really that interesting for adults, I would imagine. I doubt it's going to feel anything like even Detective Pikachu, and it will probably feel a lot more like Pokemon, the movie, or the remake of Pokemon the movie, something like that. At a certain level, it's kind of ridiculous seeing that there's been years and years of success with the Pokemon movies. It's kind of ridiculous that they haven't already been trying to make Mario movies and Zelda movies and Donkey Kong movies. Like, these things should have existed a long time ago. And I know there were originally some movies, but it's been like 15-20 years since the last Nintendo first party character had a proper movie, or maybe some direct to DVD movies exist, but that's about it. Gametsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1701. Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin is given 36 out of 40, so pretty decent. And then this incredibly long titled game for the Switch was given 31 out of 40.
This is my fate after all.
This is an incredibly long title. It's like, if anything, it seems like maybe 3 games in a row. But that's it. Also, fairly low number of games reviewed this week.
A glimpse into the future is only the beginning.
Apparently, this long title is shortened down to Mon Yu, which I don't know how you get Mon Yu out of this. Monster wo Tashite Tsuyoi Kinya Yoroi wa Tinishanai. Yeah, the U part. See if we can see something more about Mon Yu. See, that would be the point here, where you would see, that's kind of the example I'm talking about, where Gemetsu gets it right. If they wanted the hashtag Ubisoft here and you click on hashtag Ubisoft and that brings you to every news article about Ubisoft, that's fine. Seems like this Mon Yu is a monster dungeon crawler. Although it may be a lewd one, looking at how this one elf girl is bikini clad. And certainly, even as a Japanese game that probably advertised itself a ton, I do not recognize it at all. Looking at this trailer. Yep, it just looks like a dungeon crawler type RPG game. Maybe it has some gacha elements, although how it would have gacha elements on the Switch would be very questionable. Like, I don't know how you'd pull that off. Moving on, Gemetsu says Level 5 is recruiting staff for a brand new RPG project. They're seeking a director, producer, programmers, and more. Gemetsu tends to not list job listings, which is interesting. Maybe they're going to start doing that. This is the Ni no Kuni developer, Level 5. So, brand new RPG project. I'd have to really question if it isn't just going to be more Ni no Kuni, though. It might not.
So this is my fate after all.
Let's see, the overview trailer for a game called Furaraki 4 for the PS4 and Switch. I believe we've seen this one before. It's like kind of a travel game, I think. Yeah. We've seen a few of these and they don't really make a lot of sense. It's like they sent an intern on a mission just to take a lot of photos because they didn't want to pay for any kind of copyright. Let's see.
This isn't your run-of-the-mill spell.
Let's see. Metallic Child, animated trailer produced by Studio Trigger. This roguelike action game is due out September 6th for the PC, PS4, 5s, and Switch.
Scouting's my middle name.
See what this looks like.
Be gone.
I've gone too far
We
now.
got anime girls and robots. Kind of reminds me of like Tenchi Muyo. You've got super long hair. What was the one with the big drill? So they fight in these kind of like powered armored suits, I guess. Because that's the idea. Seems like it's probably a fairly kid-friendly looking game. Although I'm not sure if you should trust Studio Trigger's animation as far as the quality of the video game, because they won't be the ones actually making the video game.
Different colors, same great taste.
Okay. How do we want to handle this?
The ordained hour has arrived.
I have no plans to address. Have a sip.
Save yourselves.
Let's see. Trigger Witch launches July 28th for the PS4 and Xbox One, 29th for the Switch, and later for the PS5 and Xbox Series. This is a 2D twin stick action game, which I think we've seen this one before. It looks kind of like a Zelda game, so it's a confusing mix of visuals, but in all fairness, most top-down twin stick shooters do look pretty ugly, so going for kind of a Zelda look is interesting. Speaking of Zelda, yeah, I'm constantly wanting to play Zelda Link to the Past on my RetroPie, but it is such a hassle not having a dedicated TV and not having time really to play it. And anytime I turn on the RetroPie, I just try to program it more than actually play games on it. Which that does highlight a factor, certainly, on a project like RetroPie, is that if you have a ton of other games, and if you're a YouTube content creator in particular, you're just not really going to have time to play old abandonware games, ROMs. Which will definitely be a factor in the fact that there is news that LibRetro has now a core that supports Game & Watches, and we'll talk about that more. But it's one thing for people nostalgic for NES games to go back and want to play NES games or arcade games. It's a much smaller group of people who are nostalgic for Game & Watch games who want to play those.
You must die.
Even my history and nostalgia for playing LCD handheld games does not include Game & Watch games, because they were just not sold in large quantities in the United States when I was a kid who would have been interested in that.
Lots of bones, but make it fashion.
Let's see. Tales of Iron launches September 17th. This is a hand-drawn RPG adventure game that's coming out for basically everything. Do we have a trailer to show it off? Yes, we do. Yep, this looks like it might be interesting. But yeah, this also could be a fairly short experience, and that would kind of stink. A game called Omno, O-M-N-O, for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC launches July 29th. Switch version has not yet been dated. Let's see. Is this a game we've seen before? I don't think so. Although there's been a couple of games that look very similar to this. This could be more of a walking, puzzling, kind of platforming game. That there may not be any real conflict. in it.
Born to be fabulous.
Let's see, a game called Realms Deep 2021 has been set for August 13th to 15th. I guess that's not a game. That must be an event, because it says over 100 titles will be featured. 3D Realms will host an event called Realms Deep. Jeez. I should have been able to know that. That's embarrassing.
Laces, everyone.
Like,
Work starts
but
at 6
I haven't
a.m.
heard of Realms Deep
For
before, so it must not be a particularly large
Detestable.
event.
I lowballed you.
A science fiction action platformer, Blackwind, has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, due out in quarter 4 of 2021. Is this robots fighting kaiju? Top-down beat-em-up mech game with some platforming. There could be something here, but this also could be very dull. I could see a game like that just having you beat up and plow through hundreds of the same repeated enemies over and over again.
Dark Lord, is that you?
Prepare yourself.
Should have hit that one.
The blade knights never back down.
Let's see. The romance visual novel collection Full Kiss SS is coming to PS4 and Switch on October 28th in Japan. It includes Full Kiss and Full Kiss S.
You were done for.
So,
Go on, eat up.
okay. Yeah. Don't know if there's much more to say here. It seems like
Something you gotta
They're-
fight for it.
they are romance visual novels. Not sure if they're girl-on-girl Yuri, or if it's just that the male protagonist is never shown on the cover, so it's just 3 different female protagonists, love interests.
Let the stakeout begin. Oh, so it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Was a mystery?
You see, I'm only getting stronger.
Find your clues, find your bat. Oh, so it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Well, that worked fairly well. Gamatsu has an article here. DICE Los Angeles has become Ripple Effects Studio. They have started working on the yet to be announced project. So they changed their name. I don't know if there's any real major difference though, as far as DICE being called DICE versus DICE being called Ripple Effect.
Was a mystery?
There is kind of a weird circular logic. You can have both directions with video games keeping their names and then trying to make it feel like the same people that work at Nintendo now are the same people that worked at Nintendo in 1983, which in the case of Nintendo that is actually fairly true, while in the case of Atari it is completely false.
Let us pierce the twilight Sleipnir. Let us end this. Start the retreat.
But at a certain point, I think 8-10 years after one game is created, you've probably lost most of the talent and mentality of that game developing group. compared to what they're making now. They tend to swing after about 8 years of working on the same style of games to doing something different, or just thinking in a completely different way. That is one of the things that's so weird about Hellblade, is that Ninja Theory, I believe is the name of the group there, as in theory, the name of that group has done some amazing games, and so it's very weird to see Hellblade have just like no action in them at all, since every other game they've done has pretty much been high action games. And it's not, and yeah, it seems like a lot of it really is just shuffling deck chairs on the sinking Titanic. When they change the names, they should just keep the names. Even with the whole THQ Nordic scenario, where they wanted to be THQ the whole time, and they've just basically done some legal shenanigans to go bankrupt and call themselves like Nordic Games for a while, and then acquire enough to call themselves THQ Nordic, and eventually they'll just go back to calling themselves THQ. Not that even THQ as it is a name to could really sell a few more games. Nobody has particularly good positive memories around THQ as a game company. And certainly in the case of THQ, you know that there's an ego around the idea of trying to resurrect your failed company's name. Moving on, a game called Out of Line for the Switch has been delayed to August 18th in North America. Still launches today in Europe. Interesting that it would be delayed in North America. Right. I think I may just skip the games till the end, and I may just skip them all completely today. And I may even just curate the games. Part of the announcement for Assassin's Creed Infinity is that now it is a cross-studio project, which is to imply that more than one studio is working on Assassin's Creed games at a time, which I think it kind of had always been the case that there had been 1 to 2 to 3 different offices working on Assassin's Creed games, although the Assassin's Creed games were being released in a linear order, and that's not uncommon by any means to have a have 2 teams working on a series so that the sequel comes out earlier and quicker. Feel like I probably have not slept well enough, because I am losing my attention span quickly. I kind of buried the lead. A Nintendo Switch OLED model has been announced for, I believe, October 8th is when it's actually coming out. It is a kind of completely pointless incremental upgrade. Here we have a quote, "Stick with your current Switch if you don't care about the OLED screen," says a Nintendo marketeer. It is a slightly bigger Switch screen with an LED screen, 64 gigabytes of space, versus 32 gigabytes of space, a slightly improved dock for cooling, and with a built-in Ethernet port, losing the USB port instead, and a better kickstand. I think it also claims to have improved audio, which may be a slight improvement.
Foul forces of darkness, bow
But
before
that's
my
about it.
tempest.
There's no more RAM in it. There's no faster graphics or CPU in it. It doesn't support any higher resolutions. It doesn't fix the Joy-Con drift. At least it doesn't publicly admit that it has fixed the Joy-Con drift if that was an issue.
Wind, grant them courage.
That's yeah, I'm gonna have to break out my emergency supply of water here. Throat is burning. I don't even know why. Yeah, and that water tastes stale. It's been sitting too long in a plastic jug. Guess we kill this.
Promises. Blow on, dear wind. Allow me to take my cut.
Video Games Chronicle also says that the Nintendo Switch LED dock will be sold separately. Arguably, that's probably your best bet. Is buy yourself a second dock with whatever Switch you already own. The new OLED model is like $50 more expensive, which it's definitely not $50 worth of improvements. But yeah, if you can get a second dock that has wired Ethernet and slightly better cooling, that would be great. That being said, improving cooling but not being able to have a native rendering resolution at even 1080p and then upscale to something like 2K or 4K, it then seems like it is fairly pointless to have that upgraded. Upgraded cooling. Right. Guess you do this.
Is an extension of myself.
Let's defile the battlefield.
This. I guess you do this.
Scatter like the blossoms.
I'm sick of being a whoopsie daisy.
That.
Get ready to
Blow
fly.
on, dear wind. I love the chaos.
Yep. I think you probably would just want to have a scenario where you just save your money for the next Switch 2. I don't think that they're gonna come out with something called the Switch Pro. I wouldn't be surprised if they have something that comes out that is fairly different from what the Switch is. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with a standard boxy console that still used Joy-Cons and had just the ability to like attach 4 Joy-Cons to the front of it and it looks something like a GameCube or something. And you plug it directly into the TV, and they say, all right, this is the Switch Pro. It loses the portability at that point. If you want a portable system, you have to buy the Switch, and we're gonna maintain the Switch for longer because of that. Because with the Switch, they merged their Game Boy and their console units together, and they probably are somewhat regretting that now, because they're probably not making as much in sales.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you?
A flash of metal, a silent night.
If you want me to hurt you, I'm gonna scoop out your guts.
Seriously.
I'm
So yeah, I did want to show this. There is a libretto quick look for GW Game & Watch. So this core right now, it runs simulators converted from source code for the games available at Mad Regal. Now, the thing here is that
to do more.
even more than the MAME emulation, which was emulating a small selection of hardware, a relatively small selection of hardware, the emulation that is happening for these Game & Watch games is pretty much unique for every single game. There's no code running these games at all. It's not assembly language, it's not C++, it's not any kind of programming code at all. What is happening here is you are playing a custom bit of circuitry that they made for every single game. Now, in all fairness, some of these games probably played exactly the same with the exact same timings and concepts, so it's very possible that one circuit board that ran a game like this was then connected to a different LCD screen, and the same chip could play the same game even though it looked visually different. There was some level of complexity in the late sections of Game & Watches, if you're really going to call this little toy LCD screen game a Game & Watch, which it really isn't. This is an official Game & Watch, and this one has two screens to it. They had to do kind of a considerable amount of work to be able to emulate these, because they had to do high resolution scans of the LCD screens that were custom made to get all the images. Because again, these are not pictures, these aren't bitmap files. These are etched directly into a liquid crystal display. And so you would they did, it's been a 2 or 3 year long effort that I've been aware of it, to get people to send these Game & Watches to the person in charge of emulating this, or working on emulating these, and he was scanning the LCD screens, he was taking them apart, he was examining the circuitry under a microscope, he was trying to figure out what the chips did and what the circuitry of the chips did. And that's a hard process, certainly, to reverse engineer circuitry by potentially dissolving a chip and removing the top layers of a chip and seeing how the actual circuits are constructed. Also, since it's such a effort, I doubt there will be very many revisions of this emulator, because I doubt there will be too many people that could even recognize or complain if something is being emulated wrong, because there is not a large scene of people playing Game & Watch games by any means. But yeah, that is very interesting from a historical perspective and fairly uninteresting from a gamer perspective. This is one thing I kind of hate about YouTube too, is that people have been making these in-screen concepts where here it says check out this video, and at some point they will put a video that overlays into this, but it's not automatic and it's not easy to do, and at any point YouTube could change its mind about in-screen the way in-screens work, or if they exist at all, and then you end up with this at the end of your videos. Which, to make it even worse, you cannot typically edit the first few seconds of your videos or the last few seconds of your videos. So you end up, and a lot of old videos have this, you end up having this remnant content that doesn't make sense. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the Switch's latest system update helps you download patches when the storage is full. I don't know how you download something when the storage is full. Let's see. Lets players install patches for games by removing existing data from the game first. Okay. Seems like that's pretty easy and something that should have been automated in the first place. Although at a certain point, if you're removing the data first, then that also implies that the patching system is not much of a patching system, because it's not patching on top of other patches. It's only patching on top of, I guess, the original installed data on the cartridge.
Stop! Ladies and gentle ghosts, follow me!
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Pokemon Go has earned $5 billion in revenue since its launch. Yeah, that's a lot of money. The next Text Drive Unlimited game is set in Hong Kong. Which, okay, I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear some kind of controversy around that.
It looks like I'm up!
Or manufactured controversy around that.
Of course I do.
Let's see. According to Video Games Chronicle, the team behind Terminator Resistance is working on a RoboCop game. RoboCop Rogue City will be released in 2023. Let's see. We have a teaser trailer here. Looking through a render of metal. Or I guess that's cement. I thought it was going to be you looking out of the visor of RoboCop. The thing about RoboCop, and I guess calling it Rogue City might be a great way to avoid this issue, is that the RoboCop series is set in this like joke fictionalized Detroit that may hit a little too close to home. So it might be kicking Detroit walls down to make a RoboCop game and show it full of crime and violence, when the real Detroit is sort of full of crime and violence.
But make it fashion.
Moving on, Video Games Chronicle has an article. Ubisoft has removed the game from Steam after DRM has left it unplayable. Might and Magic X or Might and Magic 10 players reported it would not work due to online restrictions. This isn't just a games for Windows issue. So, yep, you just cannot play Might and Magic 10 anymore. Yep. So if you're gonna hate Ubisoft for the good reasons that you can prove, like that, where they've just abandoned old games. If anything, that is an argument for having video game companies change their name, because if Ubisoft was the Ubisoft that made games like Mind Magic 10 and not the Ubisoft that made games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, then you would definitely have a different story in your head as to which of those two companies you actually have nostalgia for and actually want to play those types of games, because it probably is a fairly distinct group of people, or two groups of people. Some people want to play the old Might Magic style Ubisoft games, and some people want to play the new Assassin's Creed games, and some people want to play the Prince of Persia games. Let's see more about the Switch. Like, as I said, it has no major internal changes. It has a smaller bezel and bigger screen. That's pretty much it. Wouldn't be surprised if there's slight tweaks to try and make it a little bit more stable and less breakable, but at the end of the day, I think it still is going to be a fairly easy product to break regardless, because if your kids are going to throw it around or even drop it, it's going to get thrown around and dropped, and you can only put so much shock absorber or rubber around components before they're just going to break from impact or heat being left in hot cars and things like that. We've at the very least not heard any stories of batteries exploding or anything like that. EA has confirmed Codemasters' leadership departures 4 months after the buyout.
Of course I do.
The CEO and CFO will leave this month. This is still from Video Games Chronicle. So EA now owns the Formula One Dirt publisher, but they don't own the people in charge of at the top, although I'm not sure if the people at the top really matter that much. If anything, I would argue that the Codemasters wasn't doing much better than EA might do with the Dirt series and the Formula One series. I don't know if there's a major improvement that can be made.
To live in the light. Our battle will be legendary.
Stop! No! Stop! I envy you.
Here we have a Gamma Sutra article exploring the subliminal spaces between strobing lights in Gall bursts crystallogen. Interesting. Lots of difficult to read games. Dangerous strobing lights. I feel like that may be the entire concept of this game, is that they're just going to show you strobing lights all over the place. Yeah, it's like they're intentionally trying to cause seizures. Like, I'm not prone to seizures at all, but I don't think for a second I would want to play a game with that much strobing, and frankly, it just looks like they've created the game here either to cause seizures or to sell you on a pretty low effort horror game. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Apex Legends devs were forced into holiday work by Titanfall linked hack.
Is fighting and despair all you
Where
know?
this is where Apex Legends was hacked, and the hackers put a bunch of messages complaining about the Titanfall and Titanfall 2. Which is interesting. Which it's weird. That's a weird way to do things, but I guess at a certain point, if you want to get your message out, you've got to get your message out to as many eyes and as many ears that can hear it. And if it didn't involve hacking and computers, this would just be a group of people upset with Titanfall 1, Titanfall 2's future / current state, shouting on the side of a road, which that would be legal in the United States with free speech and all, that you could get on your soapbox theoretically, or at least theoretically it would be legal. You could get on your soapbox and shout on the side of the road, but when you try to amplify yourself with a bullhorn whilst shouting on a soapbox, that in many jurisdictions isn't legal, and amplifying yourself with a denial of service attack or hacking is pretty much not legal anywhere. Moving on, COVID-19 pandemic was blamed for the Doom Eternal game mode cancellation. I think that's probably a fairly just disingenuous claim. This invasion multiplayer mode, if it was ever going to actually succeed, would have had to have been in the game on day one, and it totally wasn't, and thus at that point it was doomed for failure.
It looks like I'm up.
This more than likely is only the beginning of video game companies attempting to blame the pandemic on every little failing that they have, every time they miss a date, every time they're late on a project.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Amazon's Lumberyard game engine is now open source, which, okay. It's under the Apache 2.0 license. Some people probably won't like that. It's weird that anybody is even using the Apache 2.0 license anymore, or the Apache licenses anymore. You would think it would be either under the GNU licenses, or well, there's another one. I don't even remember the name of that. There's a website that you can use to generate your own licenses or copyright claims. But I don't think it makes Apache licenses, or it doesn't default to Apache licenses. Really though, I seriously doubt that that anybody's really going to use Lumberyard unless they're going to try and make Linux specific games. Like this is partnered by Adobe, Huawei, Niantic, and Red Hat as 20 founding members, and that's not a collection of people really you want to deal with. Like Red Hat Linux is probably the least free Linux, and Adobe is the least free software developer out there. Huawei and Niantic, not known for their Linux programming. Lumberyard is a licensed branch version of the Crytek's CryEngine, or at least it's thought to have been that. But there hasn't been any real games made with Lumberyard. The other issue, certainly, I would say, is it's not like the Crytek engine or the Crysis engine is the engine to use by default anyways.
There is not a soul without sin.
You were done for.
The Crysis engine seems to work well to play Crysis games and pretty much hasn't been used to do anything else. And it is notorious for pushing your GPU and CPU very hard, which probably just implies that it's not very efficient engine. And I've only seen it ever used for first-person shooter games, which, yeah, would make a lot more sense to use the Unreal Engine or use Unity Engine. I think we had already talked about this. Atari Gaming walks away from free-to-play games to refocus on console and PC. From Gamasutra. They got more to the point here in this Gamasutra article. Nintendo has denied use of forced Uyghur label in affiliated factories.
By your will, O Lord.
Which, when they were asked when they denied whether they knew any accusations of forced labor, I assumed it was the Muslim Uyghur minority that is being abused in China that they were talking about, but I don't think the original stories got to that detail. And it was just bad reporting, obviously, that they didn't get down to that detail.
The real battle begins.
There's a high chance, though, that the factories that Nintendo works with, which I think are mostly Foxconn factories, did use that kind of labor. There's a high chance that any company and any product bought from China used some form of slaved or coerced labor. And I don't know what an individual can really do. Buy local, I guess. Unless you're in China, then don't buy local. That's always a decent suggestion. Like, really, this is the whole thing is a political issue, and unless countries are going to grow some testicles and put actual pressure on China, or just straight up get into direct conflict with China, China is going to continue to toe the line of doing whatever it pleases to gain as much of a economic advantage as possible for the eventual takeover of the world that they want to do.
That beast is my savior.
I mean, really, they only have to gain enough of influence and power economically and militaristically to be in charge of half the world, and then they could effectively be in charge of the whole world very quickly. I guess we could do this. We could do this. Let's do this first. Moving on, Gamasutra has a job listing. Health Scholars is hiring a Unity software engineer in Westminster, Colorado. Let's see. Here's a blog, what devs really want from a game platform, which I guess you can check it out if you're interested. When they mean platform, I assume they mean things like the PlayStation Store and the Nintendo Store. Here's a blog. Despite Facebook's stumble, ads can still become a key and positive part of the VR ecosystem, which I don't know why anybody would write that blog. That seems counter to what anybody really wants. There's a blog opinion that the OLED model is a minimal upgrade that won't alter Nintendo's trajectory, which is probably the case. Gamatsu says Bandai Namco has trademarked One Piece Odyssey in Japan, and MHUI and MHUR. We'd already talked about that. There's a TV event that's going to happen for a game called Ryuga Gotoku. See, Blue Reflection Second Light launches October 21st in Japan. Then you have a debut trailer, details, and screenshots. Interesting. This seems like it is half a slice of life visual novel game, but then you also seem to go to a different world and have magical fighting RPG elements to kind of like a Persona game. Interesting, I suppose. If I do this,
You're in good hands. You're in good hands.
oops. Didn't need to use that extra card.
You want to hunt? Be my guest.
It's a little weird to see in this Blue Reflection game them in basically the winter skull clothes with a full coat on, and then doing RPG fighting stuff. It's way more familiar, certainly in the anime art style, to have them in a more crazy outfit like this, and arguably this isn't even that crazy of an outfit. And they have like different colored school outfits, so it feels like they go to different schools, like different colored shoes and socks and skirts and different styles of ties. Yeah, and just like a completely different outfit here. And if anything, that helps establish each of these characters. Kind of makes it feel like this is just a group of friends that get together on the summer. Also explain why none of them have like name tags. Is that? And then here's a skin or sticker for an Atelier Ryza, the Atelier Ryza character. Now we're getting into the bikini and the extra skins. Alright, let's see. Let's watch this trailer and see what the game is really like.
These clothes? Just got them sharpened. Lol.
Might be a case that these are like 4 girls that are the last 4 girls alive in this world, because I'm not seeing any other real characters. In a funny way, I'm not even really seeing enemies in this trailer. I'm seeing them instead kind of just wander around. They find some items. I'm seeing some enemies that you have to stealth around. But their cell phones work, and they seem to be doing homework, so there is clearly a world going that's still happening, but the story seems to be only focused on these 4 girls. I guess the problem here, of course, is if this is a sequel to Blue Reflection, then I would need to play Blue Reflection first. And I already have several JRPGs in the form of Neptunia games, so I feel like I would want to check out before I got around to Blue Reflection. And they're calling it Blue Reflection Second Light, but it's labeled, at least the video is labeled as Blue Reflection TIE, T-I-E.
Time to head home.
Look to the zenith.
Which,
I will rise.
yeah, that's different. I don't even know what I want to do. Oddly, I think the best thing to do is probably that. Gametsu has a Lost Judgment opening cinematic. If you're interested, check this out. Once again, it's one of those weird situations where the Japanese version of the video is not age restricted, the English version is. Which, that feels like something that the publisher of the video chose to do, not YouTube itself. Here, a game called So Desco is going to publish a point-and-click psychological horror game called Saint KOTOR for consoles and PC in 2021. Never heard of a company called So Desco. Doesn't seem like there's a trailer yet. We already talked about the LED. There was a lot of things around it, certainly. It seems to be thematically built around the black and white theme of the new Metroid game, which, like, visually, a black and white theme is kind of the opposite of what I would want. I wouldn't want white Joy-Cons because they probably get dirty very easily, compared to a black controller, which hides dirt fairly well. Let's see. Gametsu says Skydrift Infinity launches July 29th. Which, let's see. Looks like it's a Mario Kart style racing game. Doesn't look terrible. Is this for PC? Yes. So, yeah, I might want to check this out. Feels kind of like an F-Zero style game flying around. And then in a lot of ways you can fix your problems around not finding that many like dogfighting flying games out there that are particularly good, and not finding that many Mario Kart games on PC that are particularly that good. By having something that potentially could do both, maybe it could do both well if you get really lucky. I wonder if it's Shadowverse that's having trouble here or my network that's having trouble here. Like, I know my backup on my phone is running, but it's been running this whole time, and frankly, it's limited on the amount of space it can use, or speed it can use in bandwidth, but just by the speed of the Wi-Fi connection and the speed of the hard drive. So I don't think it would really all of a sudden cause networking issues. Let's come back here and see if anything's loading. Let's see. Moving on, Kimetsu has an article here. A 3D platformer called Pile Up Box by Box is coming to PS4, Xbox One, and Switch on August 17th. It's currently available on PC, which I guess that means we can just go to its Steam page and check it out there. And we can see that Steam loaded up perfectly fine. Either I didn't see this game or I just dismissed this game, and I could see myself dismissing it fairly easily. It's a family-friendly co-op 3D platformer. It's $11.24. It says it has single player. I guess I'll put this on the fall list. But also you have this issue where this came out May 18th, 2021. It only has 23 reviews, even if they are 95% positive. That makes for a hard decision in the positive direction. Gamatsu has the Xbox Game Pass, adding Tropico 6, Blood Roots, Farming Simulator, and more in mid-July. Let's see. On July 8th, Dragon Quest Builders 2, Tropico 6, and UFC 4. On July 15th, Blood Roots, Farming Simulator 19 in the medium. And Going Under is maybe going away. It was labeled as in case you missed it. No, the leaving soons are UFC and UFC 2, Endless Space, Downwell, and Crosscode. Yeah, I think this might be legitimately Shadowverse having network troubles. They did put out a what felt like emergency update in the middle of the night. Alright, well, let's go all the way to the title screen and see if we can load back in from the title screen. Yeah. Alright, well, let's just cover the news then. State of Play is set for July 8th, featuring Deathloop, indie, and third-party games. So tomorrow we'll have more State of Play. King of Fighters 15 has been confirmed for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and PC, which I thought they probably would have announced that already. The Friends of Ringo Ishikawa developer Yeo announces a game called Fading Afternoon for PC. It'll launch in 2022. It looks like it's a pixely kind of beat 'em up game, which I think you probably need to have played the friend of Ringo Ishikawa first. Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song has been delayed to February of 2022, and they have a character trailer for a character named Caleb. which it seems like they're going to do a character trailer for basically everybody. Every important character in the game. The Lord of the Rings Golem launches in fall of 2022 for basically everything, which this game has been in development for a long time, certainly. I can see the beginning of the end here, and we may very well just have to end this stream because of network issues. Like, I don't know what else to do. I could reboot my router, certainly, but if it's not a router issue, then I have no idea what it is. Well, looking at my phone, it does seem like that issue still did happen again. I mean, it's ridiculous. Obviously, I just cannot use the 5 gigahertz connection. Like, I updated the router information and all of that, and but then if I reboot my router, the entire stream will drop too, and right now we don't have any drop frames, which that's the crazy part, that anything would be working. Yeah, I updated the firmware. I've done it multiple times. But it does seem like there is just a problem that happens when the Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz is enabled and works. So, like, the only thing I can think is turn it down as slow as possible. But yeah, that's super frustrating. So I guess what we'll do here is I'll just have to pretend like we can continue. So we have a Gemetsu article here. World War I themed first-person shoot survival horror game ad infinitum has been announced for consoles and PCs. It is possible, I guess, that these videos had already been pre-downloaded because of the way Chrome has been set up to just pre-download things. That would be kind of unbelievable, but maybe. A game called Session is going to launch for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. This is the skating game, or one of these skating games. A game called Steel Rising launches June 2022 and has a gameplay trailer. I'm not sure if this is the game I'm thinking of or the other game I'm thinking of. Seems like you're beating up on robots. You may be a robot yourself. It's kind of marionette, automaton type robots. Feels like slightly higher action than a Dark Souls game. And that enemy feels a lot like one of the enemies in Nier Automata. So, wouldn't be surprised if this is heavily stealing from Nier Automata. Blood Bowl 3 has been delayed to February of 2022 and has a campaign trailer. Seems like a lot of things are getting delayed to February of 2022. I wouldn't be surprised if they get delayed a lot more. It doesn't seem like this trailer is really going to show you any gameplay. Nacon and Ace Team have announced Clash Artifacts of Chaos for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Which we'll see if we what kind of game this is. Is it some kind of board game? Or is this the intro where somebody cheats at a board game and then they end up fighting? Yeah, this doesn't really look like a board game. This looks like a punching game. More of a kind of adventure beat 'em up game. Which at this point there's been, I think, at least 2 or 3 too many bad beat 'em up games where everybody looks weird. And you have like Fist, F period I period S period T. You have Xenoclash, which I suppose that's what this is inspired by. But yeah, there's been a little bit too many of those, and I don't think any of them have really succeeded. Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown launches September 22nd, 2022. Yeah, everything is just like a year away. Which, I mean, honestly, it should make this year's holiday shopping fairly easy if everything is a year away. Danganronpa Decadence launches November 4th in Japan and December 3rd in the West. This is a 4-game collection of Danganronpa games version. Danganronpa 1.2, Danganronpa 1, 2, and V3, and a brand new title, Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp, on one game card. But Danganronpa S is a spin-off game basically, so you're really paying a premium here to get a bundle for Switch of playing the Danganronpa games on the Switch. Which the Danganronpa games are fairly long for their visual novel elements, so I could see the mobility of being on the Switch helping a little bit there, but it probably won't change much. This is also ignoring the Ultra Despair Girls side game to make it probably a little bit more kid-friendly. See if this works now. I doubt it will. Meanwhile, we have a game on Steam here called African Safari. We only have a few games on Steam, so we can't just burn through them all. It's $11.99, English only, no interest. Here we have Fill and Cross Pirate Riddles, which is Picross games and not really riddles, $2.99, bunch of languages. 1001 Jigsaw Earth Chronicles 5. Let me drink some water. See, the weird thing is that it has to do with the QoS, I think. Still, and maybe I just need to turn the QoS completely off, as insane as that might be. Because there's no reason why the Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz part and setup should have affected the connected, like, yeah, there's no reason that should have affected wired connections to my computer. Yeah, this is a jigsaw puzzle game. What's more to say? I'm not gonna buy any of those. $2.99, 4 languages. Here we have a game called Keep Trying Zombie Apocalypse. Feels a little asset flippy. It doesn't feel like there's probably enough here. There's just far too much competition in the field of zombie games, and I just don't feel like there's enough. It's free to play, English only, so not really asking a lot. Let's see, here we have a game called Coastline Simulator. Coastline Flight Simulator. Which doesn't look like much. $16.99, bunch of languages. Suppose we can't do any recap or anything like that. If we can't connect anyways. I still don't have a single network drop frame. Now I am looking at my backup software on my phone, and it was uploading one file for a long time there, so maybe that was taking all the bandwidth, and now that would close that port. Maybe that doesn't mean that it's done loading or anything, or done uploading, but it's now back to uploading smaller files. So there might be a point here where this worked, but I kind of feel like the answer is going to be no. Alright, moving on. We have a game called Nectophobia, Devil Unleashed, which is labeled as a point-and-click horror game. It feels too much like a asset flip horror game. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough here. $5.39 English only. Here we have Fantastic Mahjong Connect, which is just tile matching game. 49 cents English only. Here we have a game called My Downtown, which is just a match 3 game with maybe some resource management city building elements. $5.94. There is an argument there to the idea of having a mini game work alongside your city management strategy game, but I feel like those are two very different audiences. There's going to be people that want to do a city builder and be mostly unencumbered by a mini game, and then there are going to be people who want to play a mini game and be mostly unencumbered by any strategy game. So I don't think that's really a good mix. Here we have a game called Go Rocket, which looks like nothing. $2.39. May very well be a case once again where my router just doesn't have enough processing power to do everything at once, and that's what's crashing it. This game here is called Death Realm. Looks like a Dark Souls clone game. It's early access for $14.99. Third-party EULA. It doesn't look so incredibly awful that it doesn't deserve a follow, so we'll give it a follow. Here we have a game called Biscuits 4, which I don't know why we have a Biscuits 4 game. What happened to Biscuits 1 through 3? Well, here's Biscuits 1. They came out on August 5th, 2022. That has 5 user reviews. It's selling for $5.99. This doesn't look bad, but it's hard to kind of justify that price even where it is, with such relevancy. Actually, if we look at the reviews, it's like at 58%. That's fairly low. hardly a game. Literally played better Flash games in 2004. It's like one review. So then if we looked at Biscuits 2, what are the reviews on that one? One review, 55%. So not getting better. Biscuits 3, 64% positive review. Seems like they're desperately trying to make this be a thing, but the problem with it is it seems like they're barely making a game. And it seems like every new game that gets made is a different style of game completely. So that definitely feels like shenanigans. Here we have a game called Black Hair Girl is Best Girl. Okay. Looks like it's a romance visual novel with some lewd imagery. Let's see, 764, English, Chinese, full audio. I'll put it on the full list. Being a Chinese game, high chance there's not actually any adult content in it, just lewd content. Here we have a game called I Am Strongest Legend. Looks like garbage asset flip joke game for free. Here we have a game called Cyber Rush, which looks like a fast-paced shooter or slasher game, but seems like visuals are incredibly overblown with the oversaturated brightness. And I'm not seeing anything here in the game that makes it look really good. It's early access for $9.99. It's a VR game. That might explain why half of the footage looks like you're looking downward. Here we have a game called SCP Strategy, which looks like an uplink style clone game, which that might work a lot better for SCP games instead of trying to make horror games around them. Is just take the dialogue and text from an SCP and make it more strategy experience. Early access coming soon, English only. I'd like to see how people respond to that. Although, in all fairness, I think people are probably not that interested in SCP as much as it was somewhat interesting for a brief moment there. I think people quickly moved on to the next thing. You have a game called The Bad, the Worst, and the Janky, which looks like it's just a top-down shooter, player versus player shooter game. Free, shared split screen, English only. Here we have a game called Cat of Monte Cristo, which it looks like a low-effort RPG maker game, 79 cents, English only. Here we have that Kellogg's Gut Bacteria Reef. Yeah, what's crazy is, like, I'm still able to put things on the follow list. I'm not getting any problems there. So, some things are working. It's just some things aren't. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Here we have a game called Battle for Antares. And see, that might very well be an indication that it's not my connection at all, and this might be a legitimate ISP issue. My internet service provider may be half down. This game looks terrible. $5.99 English only. Here we have a game called Mini Kart Racing. Not seeing anything particularly interesting there. Early access, $1.19 English only. Here we have a game called Future Revenge of Bolo, which doesn't look interesting. Early access, $1.39, several languages, bunch of languages, allegedly supported. Next we have a game called Flying Pudding, which looks like nothing. $3.99. Here we have Vacation Adventures Park Ranger 6, which looks like nothing. Good thing I got all the daily quests done. The only thing I didn't get done was a private match, and I can do that off screen. This is just a hidden object game for $6.99. If I was ending today and I had like 3 daily quests, and I guess I technically will have 3 daily quests fairly quickly, that certainly could have been a problem. Sorry, I keep turning away to drink water from my microphone. Which, yeah, I'd like feedback on this new, louder live stream. I'll check the videos myself, but the videos sounded fine to me. There's definitely different volumes based on different things. I know that the viewer that had problems said they were listening on their headphones, and if you're listening on headphones on an Apple or an Android phone, they often will turn down the volume so you don't blow out your eardrums anyways, so that makes things quieter just because of a system-wide volume limiter. I know on my cell phones I turn up the volume way louder than it should be, and that's kind of the catch-22. Certainly if you are even showing the signs of slight deafness, is that you start to turn it up louder, which makes the problem worse in the long run. Here we have a game on Steam called Tiny Hunter, which looks like nothing. $6.99, English and French. I don't think I really want to turn my audio up higher where it's actually amplifying though, but there's certainly ways I could adjust the audio and not actually amplify anything. Here we have a game called Orc Scrolls, which looks like nothing. $1.79, English and Russian. What I mean by that is the game audio and the microphone audio is already a line level that is being turned down in several places. So if I just stop turning down the audio, I can make it louder versus turning up the audio and adding amplification, which I don't want to add amplification because that would potentially add noise. We also have the noise reduction going on, so that could be making things quiet too. Although that's only going on my microphone, it's not going on the game audio. But yeah, typically I have the game audios of everything down to like 2 or 3% of what it could be, so. Here we have a game on Steam called The Wolf's Den, which looks like a horror asset flip adventure game. Doesn't look interesting. $1.69. They're saying it's related to Hellblade, which that's interesting. Yeah, it got a BAFTA, this game, and that's about, I think, the only award it's gotten. It got 3 game awards, certainly. It's got all these reviews at 9 out of 10. I don't know how any of these people can justify giving 9 out of 10. So I'd have to basically open this image in a new tab to see it better. Eurogamer, BAFTA, Game Awards, Best Indie Game of 2017. And I'd forgotten that this was the 2017 Steam Awards. Like, I feel like half the people that gave awards to Hellblade didn't actually play it. or they, at the very least, they definitely weren't evaluating it as a video game. Like, this scene that's being shown right now is just cutscenes, and that's pretty much the only point in which you see story at all, is in these cutscene sections. And that's the vast majority of the good quality experience. There's also, it's such an incredibly short game that half of these trailers are spoiling things a little bit. Let's see, can we zoom up an image? Only so much. So, can't figure out who gave it a 10 out of 10 and then called it a masterpiece. Slant Magazine, never heard of that. PlayStation Universe, trusted reviews. Yeah, some of these reviews are actually fairly from big ubiquitous sources. Or unknown sources, if that's the right word. Yeah, I think unknown is the better word to use there. But yeah, you definitely, and I guess that has as much to do with marketing as it has to do with finding a bunch of video game sites willing to call the game a masterpiece without even beginning to realize that there's basically no game there. And I've definitely had to make this accusation more than I would have liked in the past year of playing games that just have no gameplay in them. And we cannot turn video games into movies. Like, it's just not, it's not the way video games should go. Like, the bait and switch concept here is ridiculous. And certainly I think in Hellblade's case it's also a bit SJW bait and switch, where you if you went in there expecting a God of War reboot style game and played all of Hellblade, you're gonna walk out with a fairly SJW tale of a girl with severe mental problems. Although in this story so far, they haven't presented any solution or really blamed anybody other than just nature. The only bad guy to really blame are demons or the father of Suna, and that's it. So if at the end of the game Suna is raging at the world who's betrayed them, then there's a real question when that gets revealed. Like, she could be mad at Vikings in general, but she doesn't even know what Vikings killed her beloved. And that's pretty much it. Moving on, I've talked about Hellblade way too much. Here we have a horror game called A Game for Anna, which looks like it's photos of potentially real-world staged shots, and this feels like it's maybe a maze game. It's free, so I guess the price is right. It's apparently to sell Darkness Under My Bed, which if I click on this is still loading. This is mostly positive so far, 86% positive. This is weird. It's definitely one of those cases when games are weird. I never really know if that means they're weird in a good way or weird in a bad way. Yeah, even these screenshots are loading though. This is such craziness. Like, how can some services work and some services not work? It seems to be exactly the case. Which does lead to the idea that Shadowverse itself is one of the ones that's not working. Moving on, we have 1001 Jigsaw Legends of Mystery 2, which is a jigsaw puzzle game, $2.99, 4 languages. We have about 10 more games. Here we have a game called Fire Opal, which looks like it's some kind of Tetris / numbers game. How does it play? I'd like to actually see how this plays. So you get a piece and then you try and fill things in so that the numbers are all equal. You have positive and negative shapes. And apparently you're trying to make colored pictures using that. $4.79, English only. 400 levels, 60 achievements. Third-party EULA. That doesn't look terrible. It does look like a mobile game ported, so I would have to really think about that. But I'll put it on the follow list. Here we have Yee's 9 Monstrum Nox out. So far 100% positive. Put that on the follow list. I think the Yee's 9 game will probably make it to the wish list. Although I think I still would have to definitely think about if I'm going to play the Yee's series in particular as a fairly generic looking JRPG. Next we have a game called Dash Lamb. Which doesn't look interesting. It's free. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Haunted Hotel, the X Collector's Edition. Haunted Hotel the 10th. Or Haunted Hotel the X. It's from Big Fish Games for $5.99, which is fairly cheap for Big Fish Games. English, full audio, allegedly. Probably not really. Well, I almost want to put this on the follow list, but I'm still not willing to put more of these hidden object games on follow lists. Here we have something called Super and then some Asian letters, which doesn't look terrible. Looks like it might be a little bit simplistic. English is not supported, however. It's free to play, Japanese only. Here we have a game called Rain Island, which looks like a side-scrolling shooter game. I feel like this developer has made the exact same game. Yeah, Rain Island, Mini Island, Mix Island. It's just like the exact same game over and over again. Let's see. Option. Artist creator. Yep. It feels like this is just somebody who's just putting their games and their mini games on Steam, kind of flooding Steam. And honestly, I could suspect that this creator in particular is trying to do a legitimate job there and just trying to put it up for historical reasoning and not realizing that they're also actively being part of the problem of an over-flooded Steam store by putting what is more equivalent to a fan game on the storefront. Here we have a game called Direwolf Game Room, which seems to be a collection of several Direwolf games. Which is an interesting thought. The question here Like Dune Imperium is a tabletop board game, according to this, and the digital board games are Raiders of the North Sea, Root, Sagrada, and Yellow and Youngst. So you, after this, have to then go to direwolf.com, create an account, and then you have to buy the other games, I think, specifically from their website. So they're trying to do kind of an end run around Steam getting a cut. Unless these other games are available. Well, no, they seem like they are available on Steam, at least. Well, Root Collector's Edition is. Nope. There are several games here. Root is on my wish list. Let's see. I suppose I should wishlist this other game too. And then suppose I should wishlist this other game too. But there is definitely a question, certainly, as to how you would get the actual board game. That's the real question. It's like, seems like you can buy this one, this one, this one, and this one, but I don't know how you get Dune Imperium. And I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to give this away as a separate individual game that you would jump into with your group of friends versus just integrating this concept into each of your games that are already available, and then just updating each game to have the game room as its own element. So if you, for instance, only owned Raiders of the North Sea and Root, when you launched Raiders of the North Sea, you would also see Root. You'd be able to connect with friends and matchmake and do lobby network stuff. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Jaunt, which is free and looks uninteresting. Next, we have Pixel Cup Soccer Ultimate Edition. I feel like this game is like the 4th or 5th Pixel Cup Soccer game, though. So we need to investigate that first. Let's see, $9.99, bunch of languages. Nope, apparently from this developer it's the only one. Alright, well, I'll give it a follow. And then finally we just have a discover queue, which I would need to do. And I guess I'll check and see if there's any new news. Which means let's just make the title look as nice as we can. Because, yeah, oddly, it seems like as late as 19 minutes ago, I'm still able to get more things on my Twitter feed. And yeah, that may very well be it. I also did an experiment on my Twitter feed to see if there was something about my ad blocker that was messing up the Twitter feed, and as far as I can tell, the answer is no. what's on Steam says there hasn't been a new game in 4 hours, which that would make sense. Well, this is going to be an easy wrap up at this rate. Yeah. Okay, well, either because of network connections or just because there's no news. This happens after a certain point in the evening. There's no more Twitter feed stuff. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.